I'm Julian Ortiz, and welcome to Lower Cape TV's Year in Review. Here are the highlights that we've covered this past year. Just before taking office, Governor-elect Maura Healey and Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll hit the ground running, packing and distributing food bags to Cape Codders in need. They weren't just delivering groceries, they offered hope and a look into their plans to tackle the Cape's toughest challenges.
Good afternoon. First, I hope you'll join me in wishing Governor-elect Maura Healey and Lieutenant Governor-elect Kim Driscoll all the success in the world. It's been a pleasure to work with them these past few months. Now, after 8 sometimes crazy years as your governor, I thought I should take a few minutes to deliver what my late mom would have called a proper goodbye.
In the first week of 2023, former Governor Charlie Baker departed the Massachusetts State House after 8 years in office. While Baker prepares to begin the next chapter of his professional life as president of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, his successor in Massachusetts, Democrat Maura Healey, assumed the governorship on January 5th. Just 2 days before her inauguration, then Governor-elect Healey and Lieutenant Governor-elect Kim Driscoll partnered with the Family Table Collaborative in South Yarmouth to package and distribute over 500 meals and produce bags for Cape Codders facing food insecurity. During the event, both Healey and Driscoll took some time to address the press and community at large.
I'll just start by saying how excited we are to be here today. This is inauguration week, and we wanted to make a point about showing the kind of administration we're going to be, which is an administration that cares about every single region of this state. And that includes the Cape and Islands.
Look, we're thrilled to be here. We know there are immense needs in the Commonwealth and immense opportunities, and grateful to be part of a team that's going to be able to play a role in helping make sure we're thinking about that and acting on that. And that's what these visits are about, an opportunity to hear what's happening on the ground. And as a mayor, I think that's really important, that we not lose sight of what the needs are, what the quality of life is, and how organizations and people coming together can make a difference.
Several local leaders joined Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll in South Yarmouth for the event, including State Senator Julian Cyr and Representative Dylan Fernandez.
We're here really to highlight the Cape and Islands, and particularly in this location to highlight the food insecurity and just general economic insecurity that a lot of Cape and Islanders face. And there's a lot of people here on the Cape and Islands who are food insecure. And so, we're chopping Brussels sprouts, we're putting together I don't even know how many containers of take-home meals with all sorts of food in it for families that come to this place, come to other places in the region and search for help with food and search for food at their local food pantry.
According to Fernandez, the COVID-19 pandemic sparked a rise in Cape Codders who rely on food pantries to feed themselves and their families.
It's not just food insecurity, it's just economic insecurity broadly here on the Cape and Islands, whether that is housing, whether that is having adequate wages, whether that's healthcare costs. There's a number of issues. For me, it is really hard for me to live in my own district because the housing costs here are so profound.
Now, when it comes to the Cape is a special place. The Cape also has its challenges. We know there are dire needs when it comes to housing. The cost, rent, housing generally, it's just out of control and out of reach for too many. And our businesses are not going to be able to survive unless they can house a workforce. And that's another issue, workforce. Getting people jobs is so important, and making sure that our businesses have the workforce that they need. Transit. We know how important transit is, and it's not just about the T. We are a team that understands that. Each region has unique needs when it comes to transportation, and to have a functioning economy, we need to have a functioning transportation system that works for everyone. Near and dear to us, of course, is climate, resilience. As Attorney General, I worked with many of you in advocating for greater protections, stronger protections for our environment, including the Cape and coastal communities. We know the work we have to do to build a resilient future. We know we have to stand strong in the face of Holtec and others, and I will hold them to their agreements, which do not allow, by the way, for dumping.
Well, I really want to see Massachusetts get back to being a nation leader. we were the first on so many issues, whether it's gay marriage or healthcare, or the first state to put in statute greenhouse gas emission reductions. We haven't done that, or I haven't seen that leadership from the governor's office in a number of years. And I want to see our governor's office start to push on making Massachusetts a nation leader again.
New Barnstable County Donna Buckley wasted no time after her inauguration. In a bold move, she terminated the county's agreement with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, or ICE, sending a clear message Cape Cod won't be involved in federal immigration enforcement.
On the morning of Wednesday, January 4th, Donna D. Buckley took office as the 35th sheriff of Barnstable County. Upon her inauguration, Buckley became the first female sheriff in Barnstable County history and only the second to serve in all of Massachusetts. Just hours after being sworn in, Buckley followed through on a campaign pledge and signed a letter terminating a 287G agreement between the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office and United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, commonly known as ICE. Section 287G of the Immigration and Nationality Act allows state and local level law enforcement agencies to enter agreements with ICE and engage in certain federal immigration enforcement operations. Prior to Wednesday, Buckley says Barnstable County was the only public safety agency in New England to have this sort of agreement.
One of the primary issues in this campaign when I very first got into this race was the issue of the Sheriff's Office relationship with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Our previous Sheriff's Office administration had signed an agreement with them to essentially help ICE do its work. ICE's work is civil, ICE's work is federal, and I never understood the connection between the Sheriff's Office doing that work for ICE. And what I saw, especially during the campaign, was that the agreement not only doesn't keep us safe, but it created a level of fear in the lives of people who live in Barnstable County. It targeted unnecessarily immigrants and the people who are here doing the work that keeps our economy going. It is time for us to move beyond doing the work of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and focus on our core mission, which is correction, rehabilitation, and treatment. So today I am going to sign a letter discontinuing the agreement between the Sheriff's Office and Immigrations and Customs Enforcement effective immediately. And we will be able to proceed over the next 6 years with the work of our Sheriff's Office, and this agreement will be behind us. So thank you very much. If there are civil violations, those are up to ICE to enforce. Our job at the Sheriff's Office is to make sure that the inmates who come into our custody are held accountable. They do their time, and then when the court says that they are to be released, they should be released. If they have issues with ICE, that's ICE's work. So my goal is to make sure that we use our resources for our core mission and let ICE do its work and take the Sheriff's Office out of the work of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and take that fear away from people that somehow their Sheriff's Office is going to act as ICE agents. I believe that right now, as of this moment, we are in a better place because people who feared being targeted because of the sheriff's relationship with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement can now come forward if they are the victim of a crime, or if they are in a space where they need the assistance of law enforcement. It just made no sense that our Sheriff's Office was the only entity here that was seeking to target people in that way.
A young boy's life was tragically cut short in a winter apartment fire in February. Firefighters battled the flames and frigid temperature that day. Orleans Fire Chief Jeff Deering says this devastating event highlights the need for fire safety in our communities.
Saturday night, February 4th, about 8:40, we received multiple calls for a building fire here in Orleans at 177 Route 6A. On arrival of the first crews, they found smoke and fire coming from the second story of a large building. It's basically apartments over offices. Shortly thereafter, they were told that there was still someone unaccounted for from one of the apartments.
A 6-year-old boy died from injuries suffered during an apartment fire inside a 2.5-story building near the Orleans-Brewster town line. Orleans Fire Chief Jeff Deering explains the order of events.
I arrived on the scene. Additional help was called from neighboring communities, basically from Hyannis to Wellfleet. The fire departments all responded to the scene. A search was initiated along with fire attack, and within a few minutes we located a child. That child was immediately removed from the house and moved to an ambulance and transported to Cape Cod Hospital. Later that evening, that child unfortunately passed away from his injuries in the fire. 4 other family members were also transported to Cape Cod Hospital for evaluation of smoke inhalation and complaints like that. At this point in time, the state police are involved in the investigation. In the fire marshal's office, they've ruled that the fire's cause was accidental, and we're working with the Red Cross and other partner agencies to support the family and the community.
On February 6th, Monomoy School District Superintendent Dr. Scott Carpenter confirmed the 6-year-old victim was a student at Harwich Elementary School.
Where we're at right now is how tragic of a loss it is for the family, and our hearts just go out to them and going through such an unbelievable tragedy, but also the hard work that was done by the firefighters at the scene to put every effort forward to find this young man and save him. Unfortunately, it was not the outcome that we'd hoped for.
Following a joint investigation by the Orleans Fire Department, Orleans Police Department, and state police personnel, authorities declared the fire unintentional and most likely caused by the failure of an electric fan in the rear of the building's second floor. According to the Massachusetts Department of Fire Services, firefighters successfully contained the flames to the unit of origin and knocked down the fire in about 20 minutes. At the time of the building fire, Chief Deering says the outside temperature was between 12 and 14 degrees, conditions that often pose challenges for firefighters.
Anytime it's super cold, it makes the work that firefighters do that much more challenging. We wear heavy gear, it's hard to move around, there's ice, it's just cold temperatures make it much harder. The water freezes in the hoses, things like that, so it makes it much harder. During periods of cold, especially extreme cold, we often expect that there's going to be fires because of a lot of different reasons. It's just people are trying to use different devices to warm up, space heaters, things like that. In this particular case, none of those things were factors. It just was an unfortunate accident. But it is a challenging time. There was a number of fires all through Massachusetts during Friday and into Saturday and even into Sunday, all sort of along with this cold weather.
Chief Deering also speaks to the importance of fire safety and home escape strategies for all households.
Routinely check your smoke detectors, routinely practice your home escape plans, routinely talk to your kids about what to do in an emergency. Those are the important takeaways in any of these situations, is we should always be thinking about what would happen if and how can we prepare to handle it better or prevent it from happening in the first place. And then from there, you can search online is one of the best ways. The Department of Fire Service here in Massachusetts has all sorts of different material available online to guide through what to do in cold weather, what to do to make a home safety kit, what to do to practice home fire drills. All those things are available with very little searching, and those are good exercises for families to work with.
Barnstable County announced the allocation of an $11.4 million plan to tackle housing issues, giving residents a much-needed helping hand.
On February 22nd, the Barnstable County Board of Regional Commissioners allocated $11.4 million to address housing challenges on Cape Cod. The funding comes from a $41.4 million federal grant awarded to the county through the American Rescue Plan Act, commonly known as ARPA. County officials will distribute grant funding to housing projects through a request for proposal, or RFP, process, which is currently in development and will be formally announced at a later date. According to Barnstable County ARPA manager Kara Hughes, officials will allocate funds to specific areas of the regional housing sector based on recommendations submitted by the county's ARPA Advisory Board.
The recommendations that were put forth by the ARPA Advisory Board broke the $11.4 million into 3 different kind of buckets, we're calling them, or 3 different categories to address the most pressing needs. The first one is sheltering and medical respite. The second one is for affordable housing. And the third one is for workforce housing.
From the $11.4 million total, the county says it will allocate $3 million for sheltering and medical respite, $6.9 million for affordable housing, and $1.5 million for workforce housing.
housing is a huge issue on the Cape, right? And these numbers are not going to address every single problem, but in terms of, you know, what we can do with the money that we have, we think that these amounts will be able to address some of these problems, you know, in a meaningful way.
According to Hughes, the county designated $3 million for sheltering and medical respite to address growing health concerns within the Cape's aging homeless population.
The criteria outlined will be to provide shelter and supportive services to meet the needs of the aging and medically fragile homeless persons on Cape Cod. So basically, what we want to do with this funding will be to establish medical respite services through acute and post-acute medical care for all those who are ill or too frail to recover from a physical illness or injury on the streets, but are not ill enough to be in a hospital, right? So it is a unique population in that way. So the criteria also, you know, states that it will be to update or relocate an existing shelter. And it'll also serve all sub-regions of the Cape, the upper, middle, lower, and outer. Those are all part of the criteria.
Moving on to the second category, affordable housing projects received the largest portion of county ARPA funds, with nearly $7 million set for distribution.
The criteria for funding in that affordable housing category really is to provide gap funding for projects that are highly ready to proceed and have already received funding approvals from federal, state, and local governments or private sources. So it's important to note that this funding is to actually be used in coordination with other projects, you know, that have already been funded. We want to, you know, build off of things that are already moving forward so we can move as expeditiously as possible. And there are a lot of those projects already in the pipeline that we think will be, you know, this money will be, you know, well used for.
According to Hughes, the ARPA ordinance approved by the county in February directs officials to support affordable housing projects that meet certain criteria when awarding funds. These criteria include projects that provide for stormwater or wastewater treatment systems or municipal sewers, projects that help people earning up to 110% of the area median income, multifamily projects, mixed-unit projects, and local mapping projects that help establish moderate density developments.
The last area is something we're calling workforce housing, which is seasonal housing and the missing middle. The Cape has seen a rapid rise in housing costs for our workforce. That's a huge problem, is finding housing for the workforce. So this money is going to be used, you know, for creative funding, right? To try to find creative solutions to these problems. We're looking for public-private partnerships. We're looking for some unique ideas. You know, a lot of ideas have been tossed around, and we look forward to getting some real creative ideas within this area.
Similar to the affordable housing component, Hughes says the funding allocated to workforce housing will support projects that promote certain criteria. These include the development and modernization of existing structures, zoning changes to allow for multifamily higher density housing, creation of accessory dwelling units, maximizing the use of existing housing inventory and development, streamlining the review and public comment processes for proposed housing projects, as well as creating and hosting a formal housing inventory for Cape Cod's seasonal workforce. As of February 23rd, Barnstable County is developing a formal RFP process to allocate the ARPA funds designated for housing projects.
The county will be distributing the funds by issuing RFPs where nonprofit organizations, private for-profit organizations, and municipalities, which includes city, town, village, or other local unit of governments, may submit proposals. And this will be, you know, via the county's procurement process. And they also will have to go through the county's ARPA portal process as well. The ARPA funding comes with very strict guidelines on when it can and can't be spent. So that's why it's so important to move expeditiously on this. The U.S. Treasury requires that ARPA funds be obligated by 12/31/24 and expended by 12/31/26. Depending on what comes in, we want to look to spread this around to the best entities, towns, for-profits, nonprofits that are addressing these challenges in the best possible way, and also with the largest impact regionally, with the largest impact on people, with projects that are already underway, specifically around that gap funding piece because of these time constraints. We want to try to make sure that we're using this funding, which is really a once in a lifetime amount of funding for Cape Cod. It's a huge amount of funding, and making sure we're using it, as efficiently and expeditiously as possible to help the largest number of people.
Brewster residents said no thanks to a proposed boardwalk to Wing Island in March. The town listened and shut down the controversial plan.
The town of Brewster will likely abandon its current Wing Island Boardwalk proposal following a vote at a special town meeting on March 6th. In an effort to improve access to the island, Brewster officials have been pursuing construction of an elevated walkway above Quivet Marsh, northeast of Drummer Boy Park. The proposed structure would replace an existing wooden plank pathway that lies directly on the marsh surface. The town initiative made substantial progress last May when voters authorized funding for design and permitting at annual town meeting, despite firm opposition from some residents. However, at special town meeting on March 6th, residents against the Boardwalk initiative made their voices heard by voting in favor of Article 1, a citizens' petition calling for the town to cease its pursuit of the project. Even though Article 1 was deemed advisory, Town Administrator Peter Lombardi expects the Brewster Select Board to act in accordance with the voting body regarding the Boardwalk initiative.
Select Board indicated at the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, following hearing from Town Council, that they would honor and respect the will of the voters. I think the Select Board has been pretty clear that they're going to follow the lead of Town Meeting relative to the initially proposed boardwalk. And I expect that they will vote formally to not advance that project anymore.
Brewster residents considered a total of 3 citizens petition articles at special town meeting. As with Article 1, the Select Board indicated it will honor the voting results for Articles 2 and 3 as well.
All 3 articles passed convincingly. There was a slight change in wording in the motion for the second article, looking to transfer care, custody, and control of Wing Island from the Select Board to the Conservation Commission and changing the uses. And then for the third article, the motion that was voted on by town meeting sought to rescind the prior vote of town meeting to support the updated Drummer Boy Park Master Plan and to form a new committee that will be appointed by the Select Board in consultation with the moderator, and for that newly reconstituted committee to report back to annual town meeting next May.
In accordance with state law, Brewster officials called for the recent special town meeting after receiving a citizens petition signed by more than 200 residents in late January. According to Lombardi, the session was attended by about 850 registered voters. Looking ahead to the spring, Brewster's 2023 annual town meeting takes place on May 1st. Last fall, the Select Board pledged to include an article specific to the town's Wing Island Access Initiative on the warrant. However, following the recent special town meeting voting results, that article may not appear at all.
Select Board next Monday night, the 13th, is meeting, and on their agenda is a discussion and vote on broadly next steps relative to Wing Island and Wing Island access. One topic I expect they will take up is whether they will bring a separate article bill to the town meeting in May. My guess is that they won't bring that anymore based on the results of the special town meeting on Monday and the statements that they made. But I certainly can't speak to them. But they're going to take a formal vote on that on Monday. And then I think more importantly on Article 2, Town Council's indicated that because Wing Island is already protected under Article 97 of the state constitution, transfer of care, custody, and control and or change of uses of the island requires not just a town meeting approval, but state legislative approval through a special act. And so the Select Board plans now, based on the results of the town meeting vote on Article 2 on Monday, to draft and advance a article to that effect to the annual town meeting in May.
Beyond annual town meeting, Lombardi expects the Wing Island area to remain unchanged for the time being.
There are still question marks that we need to follow up on in terms of recognizing that through this process it's come to our attention that we don't have all the appropriate state permits for the boardwalk that's there now. But it's fair to say that that's a longer term conversation. The state's indicated, at least for now, that they're not planning on taking active enforcement measures against the town. So in the near term, our expectation is that the status quo will remain. On Drummer Boy Park, as I mentioned, we anticipate forming a new committee, and the select board in the coming weeks will be approving an updated charge and soliciting letters of interest from residents and forming that committee so that they can get back to work and provide a recommendation back to town meeting next year.
Silicon Valley's meltdown shook the banking world, but Lower Cape Cod Bank said, "Don't sweat it. The Cape Cod model is strong and stable."
We've certainly seen a lot of drama in the banking industry this month, from the crash and burn of Silicon Valley Bank to the wobbles and bobbles at Signature Bank and First Republic. We're not talking the meltdown of 2008, but the seemingly relentless news has raised a new specter of failures and fears nonetheless. According to Matt Burke, CEO of the Cape Cod Five, one of Cape Cod's leading banks, the local scene remains solid and stable.
We can totally understand the concern. We are very different. Our community bank industry is very different as well. You look across our local banks and you think about the nature of those banks. Our customer base, our depositor base, very diverse, not concentrated in few individuals or a few businesses or even industries.
The meltdown of Silicon Valley Bank, says Burke, arose from a specific scenario and business model.
All banks have something in common. We take in deposits, we lend them out, to individuals, businesses, that sort of thing. Silicon Valley Bank, very different in that they had a specific industry concentration in venture-backed, tech-focused startups in some cases. And that concentration represented a risk to the institution. Only 10% of their deposits were FDIC insured. So that, combined with some instability in their balance sheet and concern amongst depositors, really led to a situation that can escalate quickly. The panic, sometimes becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I think that that's what we're trying to control here and have people understand that these were isolated incidents with risk levels that shouldn't have been there, could have been avoided, weren't in those cases. The regulators need to take a look at and say, how did this happen and how do we avoid the next Silicon Valley?
For the most part, our region's bank deposits sit securely insured, with account holders either within the FDIC limit or with any overage covered through a supplemental federal program.
For example, 97% of our depositors are fully FDIC insured. So we have over 100,000 depositors. 97% of those are under the FDIC insurance limit. So you might ask, well, what about the other 3%? So we have a insured cash sweep program called IntraFi, which essentially each night sweeps out deposits in $250,000 increments to other FDIC-insured banks, achieving full FDIC insurance coverage. And that's obviously backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government.
Banks like Cape Cod Five, which celebrates its 168th birthday this month, have a particular type of corporate structure. These mutual banks operate on a model of long-term stability versus short-term shareholder gain, which also changes the risk profile.
Today is actually our birthday. We were born in 1855, so that makes us 168 years old, and we're proud of that. And as a mutual, every penny of our earnings, over the past 168 years, is in our capital today. There's no outside shareholders or any way that that capital leaves the bank. So, that has contributed to the strength of the bank. There are a lot of forms of capital, capital backing, public banks that do the right thing and run their bank the right way. But for us, we consider our mutuality a strength of the bank because of our ability to take a long-term outlook. Our mission isn't to be profitable for the sake of profits. It's to have a well-balanced approach that ensures that the bank is safe and strong and can live on for hopefully another 168 years.
In light of the national banking concerns, What features should consumers keep an eye out for?
Great question. And we have some very long-standing customers, not quite going back the whole way. But I think they come to know us and they come to trust us. And I think that's something that you want, a connection with your, community bank. FDIC insurance, very important as that backstop, because again, you never know what's happening, even if it's just peace of mind.
In order to predict what might happen next, Burke suggests thinking of banking within the larger economic picture.
It's anyone's guess in terms of how the next move for the Federal Reserve. I think that the federal government has stepped up and done things to ensure that the banking system is stable. Created a additional Federal Reserve liquidity facility. Uncertainty has been the word of the past few years, whether it was pandemic and now inflation and the deteriorating impact that has on individuals, businesses, and now the Fed combating that. And the further pressure that puts on individuals and businesses in terms of the cost of everything related to credit. What's been happening here is a byproduct of that. Obviously important to control inflation, but it's important that we have a stable banking system and overall economy. So it'll be interesting, as this plays out, and we're prepared for this. I think banks that are doing the right thing by their risk management framework are preparing for all scenarios. We don't bet on one particular scenario. We prepare for them all, and hope for the best just in terms of how the economic aspect of it turns out over the coming months.
The Herring River Restoration Project took a giant leap this year. After 20 years of advocacy work, construction began to revive the Herring River estuary.
The sand bear, you're the sand bear! Now you're talking.
Today we celebrate the start of the construction of the Jaquesset Neck Bridge. This is the first phase of a multi-year project that, when complete, will restore hundreds of acres of the Herring River estuary.
Today is the groundbreaking ceremony for the Herring River Restoration Construction Phase 1. This is an event in acknowledgement of about 2 decades of work regarding the Herring River estuary just behind us here.
On Friday, March 31st, the town of Wellfleet sponsored an event to celebrate the start of bridge construction on Jaquesset Neck Road, overlooking the Herring River estuary. Representatives from Wellfleet, Cape Cod National Seashore, and nonprofit organization Friends of Herring River commemorated the occasion alongside agency partners as well as state and federal level elected officials. According to the town, the $31 million bridge is the largest infrastructure component of the Herring River Restoration Project and will replace part of the tide-restricting Jaquesset Neck Road dike.
This process started in the early 2000s. It really began because several local ecologists, the National Seashore, Town of Wellfleet, and many others came together and really realized that the quality of the water in the estuary, the vegetation, the fish and other wildlife were really suffering due to the man-made hindrance of the natural tidal flow here. So this dike right behind us was built in 1909, and that has really blocked the estuary behind it. This construction phase is really focused on removal of the man-made blockage for the tidal flow. There's work happening here on the bridge as the first aspect. This dike behind us will be removed. There will be a temporary bridge installed, and then there will be a new bridge with sluice gates to have adaptive management of the water volume. Then there will be work on some culverts and the raising of some roads to accommodate for the increased tidal flow.
Krista Drew only recently became executive director of Friends of Herring River, and she says her more tenured colleagues addressed a number of public concerns while advocating for the restoration project.
There are people here who really were founding members, and they will tell you, and it's not a secret, that there were a lot of questions and concerns about what such a significant restoration project would entail and how that might impact the abutting properties and the neighbors. And so there have been a lot of concerns and questions. I think that there's been a tremendous amount of outreach and education and mitigation of some of those concerns through really sharing about the science and about how really thoughtful the adaptive process will be for the restoration, and that it's going to take many, many years as well, that it's not kind of an overnight fix, if you will. And I should say that the partners that are here are extensive because there's so many of them. The project is largely funded by Division of Ecological Resources, NOAA, partnership with Town of Wellfleet, NRCS, so there's just many, many folks who are coming together.
While Friday's groundbreaking was a major milestone for the Herring River Restoration Project, Drew emphasizes the new Chequesset Neck Bridge and restoration effort as a whole remain a long way from completion.
During the process, I think there's really an opportunity for people to stay curious, stay engaged, and absolutely stay patient. It will be many years before there's opportunity to really see the full anticipated benefits in terms of the health of the water and the ecosystem. And then there will be many additional social and recreational benefits as well. So there will be additional fish passage and opportunity for anglers as well as canoers, kayakers, birders, all of that. And we're hoping that will continue to support this vibrant community in a variety of ways. And so people can really look forward to that and to having kind of an increased beautification. There's been an incredible amount of vegetation that has been damaged by the increased salt.
Cannabis retailers faced a squeeze as wholesale prices dropped. Lower Cape TV spoke with State Senator Julian Cyr and Wellfleet dispensary owner Zachary Ment to chat about the challenges facing locally owned and operated businesses in the area.
Massachusetts' recreational cannabis industry is experiencing a rapid decrease in profitability, which may threaten the longevity of small, locally owned and operated businesses. The Outer Cape has already seen one of its adult-use dispensaries close for good in 2023 when Heald Provincetown at 48 Shank Painter Road shut up shop this winter. To learn more about the challenges currently facing the state's fledgling industry, Lower Cape TV spoke with Senator Julian Cyr.
We are 5 years into the implementation of legal recreational cannabis in Massachusetts, and there are some real growing pains in this industry. You saw a real proliferation of dispensaries across Massachusetts. In certain communities, certainly that's true in Provincetown, where there were 5 dispensaries. We had a recent closure, so this is a bit of a point of transition. I think
the root of the difficulty that's now happening in the industry is that wholesale prices have come down. There's a lot of reasons for that, but basically supply and demand. There's too much supply and not enough demand.
Zachary Ment owns the Piping Plover Cannabis Dispensary in Wellfleet, placing him at the forefront of the Commonwealth's recreational cannabis industry.
The industry got caught a little bit off guard with the restrictions of COVID ending and use not expanding the way it seemed like it was during the pandemic. At the same time, other states began to legalize and are producing their own cannabis. So it was the wholesale market where the prices started to come down because there was an oversupply, and there remains an oversupply.
Adult-use cannabis prices in Massachusetts remained stable between late 2018 and early 2021, with the average monthly retail price consistently exceeding $14 per gram, according to the state's Cannabis Control Commission. The lone drop-off occurred in spring 2020 during the first few months of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, prices underwent a slow but steady decline throughout most of 2021, before dropping dramatically throughout 2022. According to the Commission, the average retail price of recreational cannabis hit an all-time low this January at $7.12 per gram. In comparison, the Commission reports the average retail price in January 2021 was $14.20 per gram, meaning prices have fallen by about 50% over a 2-year period. According to Ment, the drop-off in wholesale cannabis prices threatens small-scale retailers struggling to compensate for the decreasing value of their products.
Retailers mark things up on a percentage basis in general. There's fixed costs, and if they can't make those costs, interest rates go up, the cost of money goes up, then you can't survive.
According to Ment, the price compression caused by oversupply initially impacted low-quality, mass-produced cannabis products. However, by the fall of 2022, he says prices fell across the board, with the exception of only the highest quality products on the market. More recently, Ment says the prices have stabilized throughout the first quarter of 2023, though reports of oversupply remain rampant.
I think we're at a very key moment for the industry. Because this has happened quickly, because the business cycle is starting to go onto a downtrend. When things first legalized, there was a lot of people that were concerned about legalization, about cannabis falling off the back of the truck and ending up in underage hands, about ugly storefronts, about seedy activity around them, about lack of security. And because the price was relatively high on a wholesale side and people were willing to pay for that on a retail side, those concerns seemed ridiculous and seem ridiculous today because there's not really been any of that activity. So now here we are, as prices start to go down and the companies have higher interest rates and higher costs, labor costs more, everything, rent costs more, everything, electricity costs more. Going under is not what businesses want to do, so people can become desperate. And so that's my concern, is that the regulators and everyone in the industry stay vigilant, that we don't make those concerns happen.
Moving forward, Ment identifies the drop-off in wholesale prices as a significant concern for small community-run establishments looking to compete with large-scale mass-market companies. From a legislator's perspective, Senator Sear says the success of locally owned and operated businesses is key to the current and future health of the Commonwealth's recreational cannabis industry.
A big part of the law was ensuring that, local people were able to access this industry, that particularly those who were adversely affected by the war on drugs related to marijuana had a foothold in this industry. And I continue to worry, particularly given the amount of money that's come into Massachusetts related to cannabis investment, that we need to be vigilant on, in ensuring that those provisions in the law and those values that really informed both the voter referenda and then the law the legislature passed to clarify and to implement cannabis, that those are upheld.
I think that it's a really important time for the legislature and the regulators and the industry to pay attention to making sure that there's a vibrant small business aspect to the industry and that it remains. So that's been a really strong aspect of the Massachusetts legalization, is the protection of smaller businesses, limits on how many stores any one owner can have, limits on how much any one company can grow in terms of square footage of canopy. And so when things start to turn down and potentially unemployment rises, what you'd expect to happen is these bigger companies who have been operating at a loss, who've been trying to sell things cheaper and cheaper to drive the competition out of business because they have deeper pockets, going to the regulators and saying, one of our big competitors is going under and they're going to lay off a certain amount of people and they're going to not be able to pay their rent and the property prices are going to fall. So let us help you. We'll take care of it. We'll just relax the regulations around limits, and we'll merge and keep people employed. That's my concern, is to stay vigilant of that idea and to stay ahead of it and make sure that you're not just regulating, but you're creating an environment where you're supporting a vibrant industry that has all sorts of different players, small businesses and priority applicants and all the things that they were promised in the beginning.
In May, Brewster bloomed with housing, adding 30 new affordable homes. After pandemic delays, the new Brewster Woods apartment complex became a haven for families on the Cape.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cut!
Today, we had our official ribbon cutting and opening of 30 affordable apartments here in Brewster Woods. These are the highest quality construction you can get. These are passive homes, which means that they had to be designed in a very specific way to ensure that we had the most and the best energy efficiency. They have solar panels so that it keeps not only the energy costs down for the tenants, but it also reduces the carbon footprint that we know is so detrimental to our communities and our environment.
On Tuesday, May 9th, the Housing Assistance Corporation and Preservation of Affordable Housing celebrated the completion of the Brewster Woods apartment complex alongside local leaders, project supporters, key staff members, and special guests. Located between 30 and 40 Brewster Woods Drive near Frederick Court, the development includes 8 one-bedroom, 19 two-bedroom, and 3 three-bedroom affordable rental units with residency beginning this past winter.
Brewster had a local preference option, and so for every apartment, there's 30 apartments, every apartment we had 8 applicants, and we pulled the names, 30 names out of literally a hat for a lottery, and once the tenants were lined up, then they were given notice that they were going to be able to move in and give notice to their other, wherever they were living. Although many of the residents have just moved in a short time ago, this project has been a long journey. right? And it's taken vision and leadership from local leadership, local officials, state officials, along with generous funders and caring individuals. And you'll hear from some of them on the agenda here today.
This is exactly what is sorely needed in Brewster and in every single community across Cape Cod and the islands. In the last 5 years, we've seen a 54% increase in housing prices across the region. This is completely unsustainable. And for Cape Codders and for islanders who are not lucky enough by either luck or birthright to have a place here, if you are renting, you are one step away from losing your foothold in this community and being forced out.
Brewster Woods was collaboratively developed by the Housing Assistance Corporation and Preservation of Affordable Housing. According to Housing Assistance, the two nonprofits have partnered on a total of 9 projects over the past 15 years, bringing 214 housing units to the community. The organizations began work on the Brewster Woods project in the mid-2010s, but the development itself has been in the works for decades.
In the early 80s or mid 80s, the Brewster Housing Authority acquired the land for affordable housing, and there was a failed attempt in the 90s, but they finally were able to come back around and put out an RFP around 2015, and Housing Assistance Corporation with Preservation of Affordable Housing won the RFP process and was awarded the contract to build 30 affordable housing units.
Construction of Brewster Woods began just after the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic, which, according to Housing Assistance CEO Elisa Magnotta, escalated costs and delayed the opening. However, after a period of uncertainty, development resumed, allowing residents to begin moving in earlier this year.
In the end, we ended up with a great product and a lot of perseverance to get it done. The cost of building housing is so high, right? For some units are like $500,000, $600,000 a unit. So that's not affordable. And in order to bring the cost down and the affordability down, you really have to have good funding partners, and you have to have good town partners that are helping to contribute the land and helping to bring resources to bear so that you could keep the rent and the actual living costs low for the tenants, right? And Brewster is a phenomenal partner for that. They've allocated land, they help with funding, they had their staff really working side by side with us to be a good partner along the way. But it's something that every town on Cape Cod can do and really should do. We need projects like this in every single town.
We have every tool and ability at our disposal here in Brewster and across Cape Cod to solve this housing problem. And the real question is, do we have the fortitude to do what's needed, to provide dignity, to really live up to the value that housing is a right? And today, this Brewster Woods project, notwithstanding those 37, 38 years of delay and its birth through a pandemic, really gives me, I think, hope for what's possible.
More sunsets, fewer six-packs. Wellfleet's famous beach went dry from May to September this year. Officials say the ban aimed to curb alcohol-related safety issues.
Throughout the 2023 summer season, Cape Cod National Seashore will enforce an alcohol ban around Cahoon Hollow Beach in Wellfleet, which sits just below the popular Beachcomber Bar and Restaurant. According to Wellfleet Police Chief Michael Hurley, this new regulation change only affects the Cape Cod National Seashore property surrounding Cahoon Hollow Beach. The town of Wellfleet has had a no consumption of alcohol bylaw on town property and beaches for years. Chief Ranger Michael Valora explains the Seashore's decision and the details of the ban.
In an attempt to curb the disorderly conduct behavior and the extreme public intoxication that's been going on in this area, Cape Cod National Seashore, starting on May 20th through September 10th of this year, will be instituting a ban on public open containers of alcohol and the consumption of alcohol on Cahoon Hollow Beach.
In a media release this April, Wellfleet Town Administrator Richard Waldo described the alcohol ban as a means to address problematic behavior before tragedies occur. Valora says the ban directly relates to public safety concerns of residents in the Cahoon Hollow area, as well as conversations between the Seashore, Town of Wellfleet, Wellfleet Police Department, and lifeguards assigned to the beach.
So approximately 5 years ago, the Cahoon Hollow beach area of Wellfleet and of Cape Cod National Seashore started to see a dramatic increase in use of the area. And subsequently, over the past 5 years, visitation has grown anywhere from 20 to 25% year after year. This area of the Outer Cape has really become known as a party destination. And on most weekends throughout the summer, busload upon busload of people are coming to party and consume large quantities of alcohol. One of the most busiest times for this section of the seashore is over the 4th of July weekend, where on a Saturday or a Sunday, up to 100 buses will be arriving to drop off party goers for the day. Because of this increase of use of the area and the large quantities of alcohol that have been consumed historically, this has resulted in numerous public safety issues, public drunkenness, intoxication, public urination, the whole gamut of things that are not appropriate in public.
Over the past 2 or 3 summers, Valora says Wellfleet officials have approached the National Park Service to raise awareness of public safety issues around Cahoon Hollow Beach. He adds that seashore law enforcement rangers have observed and addressed a number of comparable incidents in the area during that same time frame.
This step really grew out of last summer once it became evident that the growth and popularity of Cahoon Hollow Beach was just continuing to increase year after year. The town of Wellfleet, they manage Cahoon Hollow Beach, and it's essentially about a 200-foot section of the outer beach. And on either side of that, to the north or south, is Cape Cod National Seashore, federal property. What was very apparent was that the section of town property, which has had an existing regulation prohibiting the consumption of alcohol or open container, people were aware of that. And by default, they would move off of town property onto federal property, where they would begin to consume the alcohol, which would then result in the disorderly conduct and public intoxication occurring.
According to Valora, the seashore's new alcohol restriction aims to align federal and town regulations in the Cahoon Hollow Beach area.
I expect cooperation. I expect responsible behavior on any of our other beaches, on both the bay side as well as the ocean side. The consumption of alcohol is allowed, and this is the only section of beach where we have witnessed this type of extreme intoxication and disorderly conduct. We understand that people enjoy to go to the beach, have a glass of wine or drink a beer in a responsible manner. And more often than not, that's perfectly fine. So we are targeting the specific behaviors that are directly related to the extreme consumption of alcohol during the summer months on this section of beach. Hopefully it'll be successful this summer. Hopefully we'll have the cooperation of the public. This is the first step in what will probably be a multi-year process to curb the established behavior that's been going on there for about the past 5 years.
Eastham new compost facility turns leftovers into eco gold. We learned from Eastham Recycling Committee Chair Gretchen Steers about what goes in, what goes out, and how it helps the planet.
Kickstarted by a collaboration between Eastham's Climate Action and Recycling Committees, the community's latest green effort is compost. Eastham's food waste composting facility opened at the transfer station on May 13th. The new composting station can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by cutting down on food waste and trash. Lower Cape TV caught up with Recycling Committee Chair Gretchen Steers about what this new facility means for residents and how it came to be.
Both the Recycling Committee and the Climate Action Committee at the town of Eastham have been talking with the town and the Department of Public Works for the last few years about doing composting here at the landfill site. We met with the administrator, Jackie Beebe, as well as John Ruffley, who's the head of DPW, about 2 months ago, to talk about having a composting site. They were very happy to set it up and had been thinking about it themselves. The state of Massachusetts, through the Mass Department of Public Works, has recycling credits that the town can use to help pay for things like composting. Eastham recently started mattress recycling. That got them extra points. So it was very low cost to get this set up, and virtually zero cost for the town. So it's been great, and it officially started about 2 weeks ago.
Eastham joins 11 other towns on Cape Cod with municipal composting programs. Orleans, Provincetown, and Harwich do not have formal composting programs, but offer guidance for home composting. With the composting program newly available, Eastham residents might be wondering, what exactly can go in the compost bin?
What about paper bags? Can paper bags go in the recycling? Can newspapers? The general rule of thumb is if it can be recycled, recycle it first. What we really want in the composting is food waste. However, they will accept things like napkins or paper towels that have been used only for food, to pick up food. If it's been used like with Clorox or a cleaner, please throw that in the garbage. We don't want our compost to be contaminated by chemicals and things like that. So the same with newspapers. Technically, you could put some newspaper in there, and in fact I saw some the other day, but it's better to recycle newspaper, paper bags, and those kinds of, anything with ink or that's been processed, better to recycle those products and keep compost for food. Things that are great to put in compost are eggs, banana peels, you're cutting up your strawberries, fruit, meat bones, fish bones. You have extra food that you've gone out, to a restaurant and you haven't eaten it. That can all go in the compost. When you compost at home, you can't people don't do meat or bones. It's not hot enough. But the processing that this compost goes through, it's heated to a very high level, so the bones and for the meat and the fish disintegrate. So even if people are doing home composting, they can still bring their fish and meat bones here and compost it here at the town landfill.
It's never too late to learn new ways to reduce your carbon footprint. And with Eastham's new composting system in place, there's never been a better time for residents to get in on the action.
I can give myself as an example. Before we moved here, I wasn't really doing a lot of composting, but I've gotten very interested in how we can reduce our garbage and our waste and do more recycling and things like that. So when we moved here, I really was interested in how can we do composting. This is for any resident who isn't doing home composting but would like to help reduce waste by bringing their food compost here. So it's for residents of the town of Eastham.
Brewster opened the first municipal swimming pool on the Cape.
Happy pool opening day. Today is a really exciting day because this is not just the town of Brewster's first time running a pool, but it is also the first municipal pool on all of Cape Cod.
We're really looking forward to the pool being a destination for all of us to gather and make memories together for many years to come.
So today we had the amazing opportunity to do the ribbon cutting for the Brewster Community Pool. This has been an effort that has been in the works for the last year. So we've owned the former Cape Cod Sea Camps for 2 years now, and the first year we were able to get First Light Beach open because we have an amazing team of town staff. And the second thing that we heard from residents besides wanting to use the beach was really wanting to be able to use the pool. We did a forum and a lot of discussions over the winter to figure out the parking situation and to get some feedback on what sort of fees we should be charging, or did people want to pay fees? Should we have the Brewster tax base subsidize the whole thing? And what we heard from residents was that they really wanted it to be resident only for the first year at least, and that people were comfortable paying a fee to use the pool. So we've done our best to hopefully come up with a workable pool pass dollar amount, and this first year is really a test season, and since it's resident only, you do have to have a beach pass in order to qualify for a pool pass, or the eligibility is the same. But for the most part, what we've heard is that people are excited to have access. We heard from a lot of people that they wanted to make sure their friends and neighbors and other residents in Brewster who might not be able to afford the cost would have some options. And the select board turned the COVID relief fund into a Good Neighbor Fund so that people are able to apply for funding to help cover the costs of that and rec programming if need be. We made the decision to run the pool in-house, and our rec department did an outstanding job in tandem with our human services to recruit and hire lifeguards. So we have a full complement of lifeguards for the pool so that we're able to be open for a lot of hours and give our residents access 7 days a week.
Chatham anglers say catch to recycling. A new initiative brought recycling bins to the ballpark, keeping the field and environment clean.
On July 4th, Care for the Cape and Islands launched a new sustainability initiative called Take Care Cape Cod in an unexpected place, the ballpark, specifically the Chatham Anglers Veterans Field. The program, aimed at reducing landfill waste at well-attended Cape Cod Baseball League games, began with support from the Massachusetts Beverage Association. Lower Cape TV spoke with representatives from Take Care Cape Cod and the Massachusetts Beverage Association, as well as Chatham Anglers President Steve West.
Right now, there's no opportunity to recycle your bottles and cans at these games. We're trying to change that.
We're bringing in our own recycling trash cans. So this is all just part of the effort that Mass Bev and Care for the Cape and Islands is doing.
Care for Cape Cod reached out to me about a month ago with this opportunity. We have very big crowds in the summertime. We hadn't been recycling very well. We recognize the importance of doing so for the environment. So he brought forward the opportunity for us to be kind of the pilot test program team in the league, and we thought it would be a great idea.
In between innings, we're having them go out and with trash bags, clear trash bags, we're just collecting any empty bottles, any empty cans, and it's basically cans and bottles at this point right now, so we're not taking paper goods and those types of products.
We're focused on maintaining the uniqueness of the Cape through environmental stewardship, conservation, really just taking care of what makes Cape and Islands beautiful and unique, baseball. And obviously with baseball, you're going to have concessions, hot dogs, hamburgers, drinks.
They get an average of 1,500 people to each one of these games. So there's 10 teams, 44 games in a season. And if you just estimate 25% of the people with 2 items of recyclable trash, that's going into regular trash cans right now, which is going into mass incinerators and landfills. And it's really shouldn't be, right? We should be recycling this stuff. The Cape has been pretty progressive with their green efforts and their recycling efforts. We found a spot here basically in the Cape Cod Baseball League where there's no recycling going on. So you can look around, there's a snack bar here, people bring their own food in, they bring their own trash in.
What a lot of people don't know is the plastic bottles, they're made from what's called PET. It's 100% recyclable. So these things are made to be recycled. They're made to turn into new bottles, but the bottles can't get into the recycling containers by themselves. We need the people's help. So far, over 2 games, we've collected roughly 750 containers. So we think we can do a little bit more. We know we can do more because we've seen some of the people at the games, even though the recycling bins are strategically placed, they're not everywhere. So we did see people still putting their bottles and cans in with the trash. So we didn't get all of them, but we probably got 75% of the bottles and cans that are bought at the concession stand and consumed here at the park. Every bottle and can that we grab out of that stream, we're saving it from the incinerator, we're saving it from the landfill. This is where it starts. It starts at ground level. It starts with what you can reach around you. If you think about the problem, it can be overwhelming because there's trash everywhere. There's stuff that can be pulled out of the trash and recycled everywhere. We can't do it all, but we're starting here at the Chatham Anglers, and next year we'd love to branch out to more of the teams in the Cape Cod Baseball League to do more of this.
We're educating while being involved in the community, and it's not necessarily shaking our finger if you don't recycle properly or maybe threw something in the wrong bin. It's really about just saying, hey, this is Cape Cod. Thanks for coming. Whether this is your home or your home away from home, let's clean up after each other. Let's take care of it.
International students from Mexico found themselves in Cape Cod learning from the Herring River Restoration Project. They're taking the lessons learned there back home to save their lake.
My name is Valeria Aguilar. I'm a university student. I'm studying business administration. And I'm from Pátzcuaro, a city from Mexico. We have a lake that is dying.
For a group of university students from Mexico, Cape Cod National Seashore and the Herring River and East Bay Restoration Projects jumped out as international role models for restoring vital ecosystems. That's why 4 young women spent part of this summer on Cape Cod, learning what it takes to bring together communities and scientists and make a shared goal become reality.
We know that you have one of the most successful projects in the United States, environmental projects, and we are here to learn how you organized a lot of people to work under a common plan, because this is our biggest problem in our community.
Their visit falls into the National Park Service's international program. According to Jeffrey Sanders, Cape Cod National Seashore's Chief of Natural Resource Management and Science, and NPS International Coordinator Linda Bennett, these collaborations create global bonds that reach far beyond one visit.
It's an exchange program. It's part of the U.S. Department of State. The idea is for them to have hands on the ground experience side by side with park rangers, park scientists. These 4 young people came together to clean up their lake in their local town.
We have a group of students, 4 students from Pátzcuaro, Mexico, who have come up to Cape Cod to learn more about the Herring River Project. And they saw the Herring River Project as a project they could use as an example.
They contacted the Friends of the Herring River, who are experienced in working with Cape Cod National Park and other partners to restore that river to its vital health.
My name is Alejandra Garcia. I'm 21 years old. I'm studying psychology at the Universidad Michoacana. My lake is called Lake Pátzcuaro. It is a closed basin, and it has been affected by many factors like pollution, sewage, deforestation, and I think our biggest problem is the way that we cannot get organized like the people around the lake.
Hopefully we're providing them with lessons learned, the things that we've learned along the way that will help them. My staff just did a really great job of going over all the various components of the restoration project and how some of the biggest things are engaging with the people, communication, and building that support for the project. The data and the science is so important. The science always has to be the backbone, the foundation off of what the planning is built off, but that communicating that science in a way that the community can understand and explaining to them why it's so important, that's essential.
Schools are never going to forget this. They're going to go back. They've learned what the park has done to work with community. 30 years of working with partners and bringing towns together to help restore the Herring River.
I thought it was really interesting the way that you used to preserve this magical river, and that was really interesting to me, like to learn new ways, new skills to apply to my lake when I go back to Pátzcuaro.
They're going to go back, they're going to meet with their mayor, they're going to try to reach out with the 4 other towns around their community. So this is going to go farther than this one exchange.
We plan to share your success story with others from our generation, and to share this information with the community, you know, to work in order to stop the damage. We are 4 young women, and I think we are really excited. We think we can start making a change, like in our generation, the young generation. And I think maybe we don't end this whole project, but we're starting like a new way to can preserve our lake, and I think that's important.
Kimberly Newman took the helm as the first New Orleans town manager in over 20 years. She shared how she sees her role and hopes to help the town progress.
I had one day in the office, and then the next day, Tuesday, was the July 4th, so it was the day of the parade.
That's Kim Newman speaking. She's the new town manager in Orleans, Massachusetts, the first new top manager there in more than a quarter century, and indeed the first town manager ever.
It's really cool to see everybody engaging in something so publicly like that is about their community. Parade was really my introduction, and we walked the entire course with the select board at the front of the parade, and I got to meet, I don't know, 1,000 people from the community that day. It was pretty incredible.
To put this into perspective, the last change for the town came in 1996, when Dolly the sheep proved cloning worked. Flip phones were all the rage, Fox News made its first broadcast,
and the divorce of Prince Charles and Princess Di captured the gossip headlines. Lower Cape News sat down with Newman to understand what brought her to Orleans and to get a sense of what she thinks the next decades under her watch will bring to the town.
Orleans is small enough, it still has the quality of life that I think is really important about a community. You really care about sense of place here, and that's important to me because I still believe that this is good work that we are doing and that we are trying to build and sustain healthy communities, livable communities. That's part of who we are. Last year, I had the proud honor of serving my 20th year in municipal management, which seems crazy, but it's true. I started this type of work right out of graduate school, and I haven't stopped since. So I've been an assistant to the town manager. I was a capital budget analyst. Before this, I was in Mendon for about 10 years, 9 to 10 years. Before that, I was in Kansas for about 5. Before that, I was in Connecticut for about 5. I'm planning on this being my last town manager job, so I'm hoping to do 15 years here.
The town also decided to restructure the position, making it a town manager role, freeing the select board to focus on policy more than on administrative detail.
So a town administrator is the same position as a town manager. The only main exception is that the manager has more signing authority, more decision-making authority, meaning that I can hire people, I can terminate people on my own, I can sign contracts on my own, I can make decisions on my own. They are really the policy-making board. They are the vision-creating function for your community. You really want them focused on that part of it. You want someone like me to come in, to execute, to simplify their lives so that they can get back to doing the business that's for the community, which is really helping shape what the community looks like and the policies that go with it. Professional management really is the person who has chosen to dedicate their career to helping communities achieve their goals without an agenda. A lot of times it's, communities are afraid to sort of have professional management because they think, well, who could this outsider, that's especially here, this person who has lived off Cape her whole life, could she possibly know? I don't, and I don't know everything, but what I do know how to do is help you reach your goals through all of these practices, and I know the programming, and I know the contacts in the state. I know all of the different things that you need in order to help achieve those. Orleans has all of the characteristics that I like about this work, which is I love a small town. I've intentionally chosen to go smaller in my career. I've worked for communities as large as 1.2 million, 44,000, 10,000. I like knowing the people in the community. I like to see the things we're talking about come to fruition. When people ask me what I do, I always give this talk about, well, it's like being the CEO for a company. It's the same thing, except that it's for a public company that's, shareholders are residents of a town, and I love the accountability piece of it. I think it's important. You know who you're working for all the time.
Lower Cape TV ArtsLight reporter Johnny Bergman premiered the rough cut of his documentary, Saving Our Oceans Through Recycled Art, in November. And if you missed the rough cut, don't worry, Lower Cape TV will hold a final showing for the final version.
Thanks again, everybody, for coming. If you don't know what a rough cut is, it's just a cut in progress. So the final film will be debuting here, again, at our studio sometime in early November. So keep that on your calendars. But we'll be having a discussion after the film. I'd love to hear your opinions, comments, critique. As I said, it's in progress. So I have a few ideas of things that I already want to change. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
On August 24th, Lower Cape TV ArtsLight reporter Johnny Bergman premiered the rough cut of his new documentary, Saving Our Oceans Through Recycled Art. During the event, we spoke to Johnny about what inspired the project and how his latest documentary came together.
So over the years, I've noticed that people have been cleaning the beaches around Cape Cod, and I found out that the Center for Coastal Studies has this marine debris plastics program where they're chronicling and cataloging and tagging everything and figuring out where the plastic is coming from. But what I found really interesting was that there are also artists that are using the marine debris to create art, to create awareness. And I was like, oh, this could be like a really interesting subject to explore because I'm always interviewing different artists, sculpturists, painters, whatnot, and so you're taking the plastics and the marine debris and you're making it into sculpture, or you're making it into like a painting. And then I found out that Cindy Pease Rowe, who has actually made like large-scale marine debris recycled art sculptures around the world, had been commissioned by the Cape Cod National Seashore to create a sculpture, The Seashore. So after I started following Cindy and the sculpture that she was making, I realized there's several artists all over the Cape and around the coast of New England and actually all over the world creating art. So I was able to interview a few of them, and that became a larger documentary, which is Rescuing Our Oceans Through Recycled Art.
This is the crazy thing that happens when people ask me, what is the wildest thing you've ever picked up off of the beach? What is it? And I say, it's actually not what I picked up off the beach. It's actually the fact that when I used to walk along the beaches, I'd look and I'd see all this stuff as garbage. Now when I walk along the beach, it has value to me.
It was really fun following the beach brigade as they were cleaning the beaches. And I didn't see the trash. So they would run after it. You know, there were balloons in the dune grass that they could see, like, it seemed to me like a mile away. I didn't even see it. So it brings this awareness of what's actually in your surroundings. I mean, you're on the beach and you're just enjoying the natural beauty of it. But then once you get into the nitty-gritty, you start seeing the little pieces of plastic, or the shovel left behind, or, you know, somebody's goggles or whatnot, or, you know, pieces of a beach umbrella. Things you wouldn't notice before suddenly, like, just jump out at me. I was kind of surprised that at the amount of shoes and sandals and stuff that they found. But one of the stories I heard about is, it's interesting, different parts of the Cape collect different items. So I didn't actually get it on film, but I was told about this area they call Light Bulb Alley, because all the light bulbs just collect in this one area on the Cape. And it's like all kinds, like, you know, old ones, if they were off a ship, or LEDs, or we don't know where they're coming from, because a lot of marine debris is also swept off the land from either landfills or people leaving things, and then it comes back onto the beach.
The final cut of Saving Our Oceans Through Recycled Art will most likely premiere this fall in October or November. Lower Cape TV will host a screening of the film at our studio at 5 Namskakit Road in Orleans.
The biggest thing I want people to be aware of is how much plastic is actually in our lives, and how much, and what we can do individually to change that consumption of plastic. Like, if it's go to a farmer's market instead of a grocery store to get like your vegetables so you don't have all that plastic wrapping and whatnot that comes along with it, or going to places that don't use plastic and trying to consciously eliminate plastic from your lives.
Mass DOT tackled securing funding for the Sagamore Bridge's facelift and the environmental impact statements this fall. Lower Cape News caught up with Deputy Chief Engineer for Project Development, John Bouchard, to learn the latest on this massive project.
Oh, those Cape Cod bridges. Who doesn't have a story about crossing them, sitting on them, or waiting in a traffic queue on one side or another of these two 1930s classics? But now both the Bourne Bridge and the Sagamore Bridge have reached an age where their concrete and metal spans await replacement, creating one of the region's largest infrastructure stories and one of the state's largest highway projects in play today. John Bouchard, Deputy Chief Engineer of Project Development at Massachusetts Department of Transportation, joined Lower Cape News after his presentation to the Region's Select Board Association to share an update on the latest on the bridges.
So this process has been going on for a number of years. The Army Corps did a study which identified what's the most feasible economic solution to the two current roadway bridges that are crossing the canal. Should they be rehabbed? Should they be replaced? And when they looked at it, economically feasible, they came back with, it really doesn't make sense to invest a magnitude of money that's going to maintain a structure that's 90 plus years old.
Over the past 2 months, several new decisions have reshaped the project's flow. Back in May, the focus was on one huge do-it-all-at-once effort with a supporting environmental assessment. But this September, based on 2 separate and unrelated federal responses, the body of work now includes 2 activities happening in parallel: reconfiguring the project into 2 more fundable phases, and completing a full environmental impact statement.
We prepared a joint application with the Army Corps for replacement of both bridges and applied to the federal government under the bipartisan infrastructure law. We received, let's say, an unfavorable recommendation that we didn't have a fully financed project. And that's very common working with the federal government. They don't give us like a portion of the money. They say, well, what's the plan? You need to do this. How are you going to do it? And generally, we have to lay out a finance plan. All of our major projects have to do that. And as a result, we started, working with those in Washington, with the Army Corps and Federal Highway, and brainstorming, present a project that you can achieve. Was there an option to phase it?
The answer to that question turned out to be yes.
Any project that we do, if because of the cost it becomes too big and we can't afford it during an individual program year, we may look to phase it. It doesn't mean that the full project isn't viable. It just means that we don't have enough money to build the whole thing. Maybe we can phase it in 2 subsequent years. So it's like, well, we know that the bridges need to be done. Let's move forward with one based on the traffic, the daily traffic that's using the bridges. The Sagamore has more crossings in more vehicles, and we looked at that. It's a little bit smaller structure. We felt we could succinctly come up with a plan to replace one bridge and said, let's move forward with Sagamore. So that decision was made with the governor's office and over the summer, based on feedback that we received from Washington, and said, hey, it looks like a workable plan, and we finished off the grant just a few weeks ago and made our submission for one of the bridges.
The other new focus expands the environmental assessment into a full environmental impact statement.
We identify what's called a class of action under the National Environmental Policy Act, under NEPA, NEPA. So we initially, in coordination, filed a letter saying we consider this to be an environmental assessment, an EA document. And then this summer, we received a letter from Washington that said we've had a reconsideration, that they felt an environmental impact statement was a more appropriate document. That adds process. It adds more detail. It can be more lengthy in time. We were never shying away from the work that needed to be done, but the federal government initially thought, we agree, an EA would be sufficient. And then as, over time and the permitting, they came back and said, we really consider that we need an environmental impact statement for this.
The challenge of the canal bridges, and indeed of any large civil engineering project, lies in the complexities of multiple organizations, multiple funding sources, and multiple needs and agendas. The bridge rebuilding process might be one of the largest projects in the state right now, but the timeline and interaction cycles reflect the realities of this type of work.
Mass Department of Transportation is the lead state agency. There's the federal government, which has the Federal Highway Administration, and then there's also the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers actually owns the bridges that cross the canal and is in charge of the canal operation. And then there's local with the communities, not only Bourne, which both bridges are in Bourne, but also community liaison with the Cape, Southeast region. We're looking at the big picture. We're trying to provide connectivity for all users, multi-mobility, so that bikes, peds, autos, busing, whatever the case may be, we're trying to provide access for all users. It's one of the largest ones we're doing right now. But it's not unique, it's not different, it's not new. We're not cutting edge in every element. From initial inception to completion, like ribbon cutting, and we're starting to use the roadway, that can be 7 to 10 years. Because the initial inception, when it first comes forward and say, hey, we want to do this project, it could take 3 to 4 years in design and permitting, and generally two full construction seasons to build and construct a project.
The process continually reshapes in projects like these. But the important thing, says Bouchard, is that everyone just keeps pressing forward, adapting as needed.
So we're continuing to develop the design and the permitting for the project and checking all the right boxes and then hitting all the certain milestones. At the same time, now we've hit a milestone of we submitted the grant. We don't stop and sit back and go, okay, what's next? We're going to wait till we get the money. We're continuing to develop the design and the permitting, for the overall project. We said, here's alternatives for connections. How many lanes should we have? What's the height? What are the environmental constraints? What are the transportation connection pieces? We looked at, we could build one segment, one direction, and not impact the existing bridge, and build one segment, one lane, build the second one. So if you're crossing to the Cape on the Sagamore Bridge, so you're heading easterly, the new bridges would be left of the existing bridge. And on the Sagamore, if you're heading on Cape, traveling easterly, the new bridge would be on the right side. 2 travel lanes in each direction, heading easterly and westerly on each bridge, with an entrance-exit lane on each bridge, and a shared use path, pedestrian access. We are conducting another round of public outreach over the next month or so. We have a project website which has our documents and the historical information that we've been posting about the project and what's been conducted and what the ongoing next steps are. I've been doing this for 37 years. I worked for DOT. I worked for an engineering consultant for 26. And I think the public outreach in building trust and building consensus is the #1 item that you need to have a successful project.
Orleans Conservation Trust purchased 4.5 acres off of Eli Road, triggering a process that impacts drinking water, wildlife, and even your home. We dive deep into the ripple effects of this strategic purchase.
We are on site here at 37 Eli Rogers Road in Orleans, and we're right on the Orleans-Brewster border. And we're also just across the road from the Orleans watershed. That's a 500-acre preserved area that protects Orleans drinking waters.
The Orleans Conservation Trust newest addition on Eli Road adds 4.5 acres of protected land and so much more. Executive Director Steve O'Grady calls it a complex but powerful addition that addresses drinking water, the Pleasant Bay watershed, housing, protected species, and fragmentation, all in one strategic acquisition.
This is definitely one of the more complex projects that we have taken on. Certainly different than our typical path of coming in with an undeveloped property, conserving that land, and more or less leaving it as is, or maybe managing the habitat a little.
The property holds 2 rundown cottages, a 4-bedroom home in need of repair, a vernal pond, and woodland uplands, all adjacent to the town's drinking water supply.
So here on this site, we are within what they call Zone 2 Groundwater Protection District. And so that's a state designation, and it signifies that this land that we're on now is really important for protecting that drinking water quality across the road here. We've got a real opportunity here to undevelop a couple cottages that are on the property, reduce their septic load, eliminate their septic load, reduce the overall septic contributions from the property. These nutrients are eventually flowing into Pleasant Bay, so we're in the Pleasant Bay watershed as well. As we came in today, we came in Eli Rogers Road here. The property outlined in red, which crosses into Brewster over here, is the property that we're talking about today. The grayed out area is the 4-bedroom home lot. So that lot actually doesn't exist yet. That's one more complication. We're dividing the lot to create the minimum lot size allowed by Orleans zoning, so that we can protect as much land as possible while also providing this 4-bedroom home, hopefully for some family who's going to live and work in our community. We really have an opportunity here to not only further protect drinking water quality, protect Pleasant Bay, but also really protect important habitat. One of the nice things about this woodland in particular is how many white oaks there are. So we have a few different oak species, I should say several different oak species here on Cape Cod, but the white oaks are thought to be the most valuable from a wildlife standpoint. We believe this wetland is likely a vernal pool, so it hasn't been certified yet by the state, but that's definitely something that OCT will undertake this coming spring. We did our first walkabout on this property. We actually came upon a box turtle shell out in the woods. It was right after our land stewardship director said, gee, this would be good box turtle habitat, and then he practically stepped on the box turtle shell, so couldn't have planned that any better. But that's one. Things like spotted salamanders that depend on vernal pools will be in habitat like this. We're less than half a mile as the crow flies from Nickerson. So when you get a 500-acre watershed property that close to Nickerson State Park, that is really significant from a habitat standpoint. Fragmentation is one of the biggest challenges that land trusts on the Cape are dealing with, where there's been so much development pressure, and we really seek out these opportunities to connect existing preserved lands.
The project also highlights the need for regional collaboration, from the structure of the purchase, to planning for housing, to planning for public access. It takes many organizations to make conservation and multiple use applications happen.
Because this property was on the market before OCT had an opportunity to work with the homeowner, the seller, we were in a position where we had to act really quickly. And fortunately for us, there's this organization called the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trusts. And the Compact exists for just projects like this that are perhaps a little bit too complex for an individual land trust to take on ourselves immediately. So the Compact has purchased the property in what we call a purchase and hold role. And so they have gotten the property off the market, took out the loan in order to do so, giving OCT the time to raise the funds to purchase the property. It has 3 homes on it today. We knew that we weren't going to be taking down all of those buildings. So, of course, the first thought was, okay, we're not going to be tearing this home down. We're not going to continue to own this home. What kind of housing groups are out there that we could partner with? We've talked with Community Development Partnership, Habitat for Humanity Cape Cod, Housing Assistance Corporation, and we're still kind of sifting through our options with those organizations. The Orleans Conservation Trust does not control or manage the watershed. So we will have control over these 4.5 acres that we're involved in protecting. And so we're going to work through all those different entities that are managing these different land holdings to see where appropriate public access may exist. Across the town line here in Brewster, there's that 5-acre piece of preserved land that's immediately abutting this property. We've already been in communication with the Brewster Conservation Trust about the likelihood of protecting those properties someday. And I hope that BCT will become a partner in this project, and I hope that they keep us in mind if they have an opportunity to protect more of that land in the future, because again, this connectivity between conservation lands is just so important.
Orleans youth tackled the pesticide reduction issue head-on at the town's meeting, proving politics are for everyone.
The change is really important because we need to inform people that we need to start to change our ways, because our world will not be the same in a few years. And we need to make sure that we protect our environment, our wildlife, and make sure that there's a better tomorrow.
As Orleans gets ready to vote on a home rule petition to reduce pesticide use during its upcoming special town meeting, some younger citizens have taken the lesson of local government to heart and have been using the political process to work for a change that directly impacts their future. We sat down with high school students Edie Siegel and Coleman Lincoln to find out why engaging at the town level matters.
What we're trying to do is, the town of Orleans is doing a home rule petition to reduce use of pesticides in the town of Orleans. There's a lot of time that's left on our planet, and we are affecting the environment by using pesticides and reducing animal populations and hurting us as humans.
The high school students have been working at Greenhouse by the Sea, a farm in Orleans that has been owned by generations of Select Board Chair Michael Herman's family. The students help with cultivation as well as selling produce at the Orleans Farmers Market. And this hands-on work with the land helped highlight changes happening in the ecosystem.
I've seen decreasing amounts of species, in our estuaries and our ponds. When I walk my dogs around my neighborhood, I see the house right next to me has a little yellow sign that says, "Pesticides, keep off."
When they learned about the Select Board's work to manage pesticide use locally, they knew they needed to jump in.
They saw what we were doing and heard about what we were doing, and people kept coming up to the farmers market and asking more questions, and they started answering the questions. And they said, hey, how can we participate? How can we be involved?
I have noticed in my entire life, because I've lived here, the changes in our environment. So I really wanted to get involved with it as soon as I heard about it.
As Orleans Select Board Chair Michael Herman explains, the pesticide petition was triggered by a state regulation. It now requires local action and will eventually end up at the state before returning back to the town again, thus giving the students a front row view to the longer process.
Massachusetts in 2013 made a preemptive law. There were a lot of communities of our 351 towns in Massachusetts that were interested in putting together their own bylaws and their own restrictions regarding the use of chemicals. What they started seeing is a patchwork of all these different bylaws and regulations that were popping up around the state. Of course, that concerned some industries, and they lobbied the state to make a preemptive law that individual towns would not be allowed to make their own decisions on what chemicals were applied. So to change that, to do a home rule petition, which a single municipality or town petitions the state to allow them to make special rules or individual rules per that town. A home rule petition can take up to 2 years. It will go to the House, and then it will pass at the Senate, and then it goes to the governor's desk, and the governor would sign it, and then it would come back to Orleans. With Coleman and Edie, who are not able to vote right now, they may be voters by the time this comes back.
Communicating forms a key part of change-making, and nothing teaches this better than actually doing it.
We had to learn about home rule petitions and how to spread the news around everywhere effectively. We had to learn about what pesticides were. We also had to learn what they do to everybody and what they do to our environment.
Lots of research, reading articles, and just finding out like pesticides, researching, going into depth, just as Coleman said. And we kind of just like learned about it through talking with people at the farmers market. We would go and we would pass out flyers, and people would come up to us and tell us their stories.
It's actually very simple to make change because with pesticides kill, but there's a way to deter and not harm the animals, such as peppermint and ant. If you spray your property with peppermint scent, essential oil, they won't come on your property because they don't like the smell of it.
Insects might not be as cuddly and furry and cuddly as mammals do. They are a absolute crucial part that can't be understated. Importance of the food web. Our insects and bugs are 95% of our animal species. Without any bugs, without any insects, we lose 30% of our songbirds already. We're losing insects up to 2% a year. They pollinate 75 to 80% of all of our crops and wildflowers in the United States.
I think to get people to change, you have to inform them about what's going on, because a lot of people don't know what's actually happening. They just think it's not as important and that they don't have to worry about it right now.
Once the petition had started, we would take flyers and we would walk around the community, walk around into small businesses, just walk around into the shops and give them the petition flyer. And we would inform them, we would tell them about what we're doing and what we're trying to do. And some would maybe turn us away, but at least they had that in the back of their mind that we had what we said might have changed their mind eventually. But many people said yes, and they would sign it right there, and we would ask them if they would like to put it up. It's just great to get into the community and have conversations with people about it. And we made a lot of connections.
The students' work puts them in a continuum of generations where people make change at all ages, becoming part of a long tradition.
When you get involved, you feel important, you feel that you're making a change, and it just makes you want to do more.
There's so many people that have approached us that have worked on environmental initiatives over the last 60 years in this town, from when they were 20 all the way to maybe they're 80 now. Whatever issue comes up in your life that you find that you want to, it might be an environmental issue, it may be an economic issue, it could be anything. Whatever issues they find that interest them in the future, and their contemporaries, they have a kind of a framework and a confidence that they can go out there and how to engage with their community to make change and make positive change.
It feels really good because that means that we're not the first ones, and hopefully we won't be the last ones, and that we can continue it and that there's people backing us to continue to do this.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see what the outcome will be for all of our hard work.
2 state elected officials fought to close a loophole that hid political activity in town meetings. A bill was filed to make this activity subject to the same reporting requirements as other forms of political activity.
Town meeting, that paradigm of democracy in action, is about to lose its loophole. For 50 years, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts set a national standard for financial disclosure around candidates and elections, but somehow the town meeting slipped through the cracks. That's why State Senator Julian Cyr says he and State Rep. Dylan Fernandez brought forth a bill to shine light on dark money spending at town meeting.
50 years ago, this coming November, Massachusetts was one of the first states in the country to establish campaign and political finance law with pretty stringent requirements for the reporting of political contributions to candidates, to ballot initiatives, to other political activity. This has really served the Commonwealth well. This has been good sunshine in our state. You can look up a candidate, you can look up a ballot initiative, you can see, who has given.
That's because the state's campaign finance law, aka Chapter 55 of the Massachusetts General Laws, targets so-called dark money by requiring that the people funding political activity disclose their involvement. This concept of transparency shines a light on the financial dynamics behind an issue or a candidate, giving voters one more piece of information as they make their decisions. It doesn't matter what side of an issue gets the financial boost. What matters is that the voter knows who lies behind it.
The law applies to political candidates, it applies to ballot initiatives, it applies to political action committees, parties, both state parties, local town committees as well. But the law is silent related to spending at town meeting if there's political activity regarding a warrant article that does not go to the voters. And this is a loophole that Dylan Fernandez and I think we desperately need to close.
As small towns everywhere, including those in the Cape and Islands, grapple with increasingly complex issues in a more contentious world, Cyr and Fernandez say it's time to shine the light of transparency into that most local of places, town meeting political activity.
We've been seeing an increasing level of political activity in towns across the islands and Cape Cod. First on Nantucket, for several years, there has been a group called the Alliance to Protect Nantucket's Economy that has effectively lobbied voters at town meeting against regulation of short-term rentals. Last spring, in Provincetown, a group popped up at town meeting called Provincetown Citizens for Housing Solutions, urging again people not to support restrictions on short-term rentals. In Truro, just these last few weeks, a group calling themselves Take Back Truro has sent mailings to voters to not vote for certain articles related to housing and related to the public works facility. I think enough is enough. We're seeing an unprecedented level of off-Cape and off-island interests trying to sway voters one way or another, most of the time for either an interest group or a set of individual people's personal and financial gain. Dark money refers to political and campaign spending where you don't know where it's coming from. Provincetown Citizens for Housing Solutions, we don't actually know who that is. We have a hunch about who that was. Take Back Truro, we don't actually know who's actually ponying up the money to send this mailer. And voters deserve, to know this. There's a lot of people who have a number of interests, particularly financial interests, before our communities who are not voters in the town, but who want to sway voters one way or another. Under this bill, all of that could occur and happen. They just have to, follow the same rules of the road that everyone else in the political environment does related to campaign and political spending. And Massachusetts has been served well for, 49 years and 11 months, soon to be 50 years in November, by a robust campaign and political finance law. And I think, we need to make sure that law applies to all political activity in the state, including at town meeting. We're trying to close a loophole, an unintentional loophole in the state's campaign and political finance law. I think when the law was written 50 years ago, our predecessors couldn't imagine that there would be this level of political spending and campaign activity, in our individual towns. A town meeting quite literally is the legislative body of a given town. And I really think it's important that we equip voters with this essential information.
Sustainability is on tap at the Take Care Cape Cod Annual Summit. Organizers showed tourism and food service businesses how to ditch plastic and embrace eco-friendly options through pilot programs.
This year we have a lot of participation because it's very timely. We've really piqued their interest by offering to bring organizations together to find solutions together and to collaborate.
The Take Care Cape Cod Summit took place on November 9th at the 204 in Harwich. Attendees from across the Cape gathered to discuss sustainable alternatives to single-use plasticware in food service and tourism. The summit was spearheaded by the organization Care for the Cape and the Islands for the 5th consecutive year. Executive Director Jill Talladay wanted the summit to provide solutions for businesses looking to ditch the plastic.
We really hope that today is going to be kind of the launch pad to really bring organizations together, businesses, municipalities, and the other nonprofits to really think about their impact and to engage and to participate and all really work together to find solutions.
Town representatives, chambers of commerce, sustainability, tourism, and food service businesses made up more than 80 participants, a record number for the summit.
This summit is really important because there have been some bylaws that have been passed, first of all, in Yarmouth and Harwich related to plastic takeout containers, and we want to provide solutions on what businesses can do for alternatives. And also it's really important for our environment, our local environment, to take care of it and the economy that we all depend upon.
On the agenda was a panel of business owners and educators sharing their sustainability success stories. One of the panel speakers, Mac Hay, owner of Mac Seafood, one of the biggest employers on the Outer Cape, came to inspire and be inspired.
It's hard where we are right now to pinpoint to one large success story. But I think I'm realizing that taking the small things that we can accomplish as a success story in itself.
The panelists were honest about the difficulties and the overwhelming feeling business owners may face in the race against climate change, and that no one has the perfect solution right now, but there are ways to move forward.
I guess what I've learned today is that there is actually a holistic solution that can be applied, and it's a multi-pronged attack. It's composting, it's recycling, it's behavioral change. One of the largest factors is going to be the economics. Can you change the economics of how some of these businesses operate by reducing the cost? And if you can reduce the cost and it's a win for the environment, then it will take off.
The overall consensus framing the summit was hope, creativity, and teamwork.
It's been inspirational to provide and to say that it actually can be done, and also to make the attendees understand that we don't have all the answers. They don't have to have all the answers, but we're going to work together to find them.
The Massachusetts Military Support Foundation celebrated our heroes during Veterans Day and unveiled emergency housing plans for veterans.
It was the morning of Friday, November 10th, or as many in attendance here knew it, the 248th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. Crowds began to arrive at the resort and conference room in Hyannis just in time for the 8:30 a.m. check-in. And while the number of attendees may give the impression that this type of event was a common occurrence, this was actually the first ever Breakfast for Veterans hosted by the Massachusetts Military Support Foundation. For this nonprofit with a long history of addressing the needs of veterans and active duty military across the Commonwealth, there's an understanding that a gathering like this oftentimes is about more than just eating breakfast.
This is incredibly important, and we actually host a free lunch every month. We call it Lunch for Vets, and it's an opportunity for these people to come together, to sit, to talk, to make friends, to feel that camaraderie. I actually spoke with a lady today who drove all the way from Boston to come to the breakfast. She comes to our lunches every month, and she was like, I love my group of people I get to see. So really incredible stuff.
And of course, the spread here was just the tip of the iceberg for the body of work that this group has on its extensive resume.
Over the years, the Massachusetts Military Support Foundation has provided more than 25 million meals and over 45 million pounds of food for veterans. And in keeping with the type of generosity associated with this organization, An anonymous donor purchased an additional 100 tickets for this morning's event.
Out of those hundreds of seats, we were able to locate one attendee who hails from our coverage area at Lower Cape TV. He heard about the event while doing what he does best, serving his community.
Well, I volunteer over at the Brewster Council on Aging. I deliver Meals on Wheels and also take people to their doctor's appointments. So I heard it through them.
But more than just a gathering to have some breakfast together, it was a chance for the MMSF to unveil their latest plan to address the growing issue of homeless veterans here on Cape Cod.
We're trying to start a program for emergency housing for veterans. Here on the Cape, we've seen a huge problem with people getting evicted at the last moment. Someone can all of a sudden sell their house for a lot of money. They sell the house, the tenant's kicked out. Our emergency housing program would give these people a place to land while they find permanent housing.
The group has their sights set on a location on South Street in Hyannis with 10 efficiency units. And for Mark Martino, it can't come soon enough, as he feels that issues of dollars and cents have outweighed common sense in recent years.
Well, it's the cost of homes. And then the taxes go up, and it's pushing people out. People that should be here, and that's veterans.
As for increasing the number of Lower Cape residents to accompany him at his table next year, he won't need to look any farther than right in his own neighborhood.
Well, right in my immediate neighborhood, I have 2 generals, one 3-star, one 1-star general, and an ex-Marine, and 2 ex-Marines. So I'm gonna talk to them and have them come next year.
For many in attendance, this was their first time dealing with the Massachusetts Military Support Foundation. So first impressions were very important.
I want them to think that they have an ally and they have someone who's going to listen to their concerns and work for them. And whether that's Massachusetts Military Support Foundation, whether it's DA Galabois, whether it's Sheriff Buckley, whether it's Representative Diggs, Fernandez, and Flanagan. I mean, it's so important that these people know that you have a whole team working for you behind the scenes. And I really hope that that's what they feel as they drive home today.
For Earth Club students at the Eddy Elementary School in Brewster, a clean planet is on their wish list. They are raising money this holiday season by breathing new life into the old.
If I think that these kids understand how they can help save the earth, my job is done. If they know how to take care of the world around them, that's enough for me.
At Eddy Elementary School in Brewster, the students in the Earth Club mean business. Every Thursday they give up their recess and lunch hour to work for the planet. And when it comes to the environment, 5th grader Justin Danielson does not beat around the bush.
Well, because we only have one Earth, and it's not like we're gonna have 20 Earths, so we gotta take care of our environment. Also, the landfills. There's so much stuff that could be recycled, just dumped in landfill. So we should, by recycling, we can also reuse those stuff to make new stuff.
Reusing stuff to make new stuff. That's exactly what Justin and his fellow Earth Club members are doing. Every year, as the fall semester is wrapping up, the students are selling holiday decorations that they've made out of used material.
Last year, we raised over $400, and they chose to purchase a recycling bin for the Brewster Whitecaps field over at Stony Brook.
The club members walk from classroom to classroom collecting recyclables. Wendy O'Brien, educational assistant and founder of Earth Club, believes this builds confidence.
The kids are amazing. They take pride in recycling. Like they'll tell their teacher, "Oh, don't throw that there, Mrs. So-and-so. The papers go in our recycling bin." I think it builds their confidence and their self-esteem. There's many, many benefits of doing something like this in an elementary school.
It helps kids at home. I used to just throw like a plastic bottle in the trash, but now I would try to like recycle it if I could. It's a really nice club. I would support it if I was you. It's a really nice club. It's a nice community, and we all just try to come together to help the world.
And that also spills over into the cafeteria. Wendy remembers how the Earth Club kicked off the school's composting.
We had so much food waste because they talk more than they eat some days, we decided we should find something that we could do with the food. And that's when we found a veterinarian who had a pig. And the kids in the recycling club would clean up, and we would put the buckets outside for the veterinarian to come. And we saw pictures of that pig, and it was like 400 pounds. It was enormous. It was a win for all of us.
Do you know about composting? Fifth grade is the perfect time to do it as well, because parts of our state standards for Massachusetts are designing a compost bin, knowing the different factors that are needed for composting to work, and also the whole decomposition of plants, and it turns back into nutrition, into the soil for plants, and it's a whole cycle. So it really does also tie into their science curriculum in grade 5.
I would recommend recycling at home. I hope this inspires you to recycle at home and to help the world more.
Tax season awaits, and this year brings many changes. Tax expert host Al Jupe and John Warren break down everything you need to know for 2024.
If you are getting excited about the upcoming filing season, our enrolled agent John Warren reminds you to think green this year.
The biggest changes on your federal return is your energy credits. If you bought windows, doors, insulation, mini splits, a lot of people participate in Mass Save programs. There may have been expenses that you made to your home that are tax credits to reduce your liability.
The state and federal government also rolled out new credits and incentives for electric and hybrid vehicles.
Yeah, the biggest energy credit, in addition to the home credits, is the electric vehicle credit. This is available to new and used electric cars. It's $7,500 maximum for a new car and possibly $4,000 for a used car.
Do pay attention to the fine print, as the new rules have parameters on vehicles and income levels.
Now, cars have to be purchased from a car dealer, and the car dealership will report to the IRS the taxpayer's name, address, social security number, and VIN of the car that they bought. In 2024, there are dealerships that will be allowed to advance you the credit. That reduces your car purchase price by $7,500. And when you file your 2024 tax return a year from now, you won't get the full credit when you file your tax return. If you got an advanced electric vehicle credit and you weren't eligible for the credit, that means you're going to owe the federal government an extra $7,500. You're going to have to return the credit to them in 2024. There's a lot to the electric vehicle credit. There is an income restriction. The single person's income has to be under $150,000. Joint filers under $300,000.
And if you are expecting more cash for your little ones, John Warren says not so fast.
We had 1 year, 2021 tax filing year, where child tax credits, there was stimulus money available to people, there were daycare credits available. Those credits were never renewed by Congress. So we're back to the old child tax credit, a maximum of $2,000 for each child under the age of 17, $500 for 17-year-olds and those older. And we're back to the old daycare credit. That's a maximum of $120 for a daycare credit.
As always, John reminds you to stay alert and be aware of potential IRS scams and ways you can prevent from getting ripped off.
IRS and Department of Revenue do not have your email address. They do not have your iPhone number. They will not text you. They will send you a letter if they want more information or a correction, suggest a correction to your tax return. Scammers are out there. They are out there to steal your money. The IRS will not call you ahead of time to tell you that you are about to be arrested by the local police. The town police on Cape Cod will not come to your house to arrest you if you have an IRS tax problem. Please use caution. And if you think that you've been contacted about a serious tax issue, verify that contact with somebody. Do not respond to the scammers. Please don't be a victim of fraud.
Thank you for watching our year in review. From all of us at Lower Cape TV, have a safe and happy new year.